So let us proceed with the concept something called as the polygon tables. Okay, the objects in a scene are described as a sets of polygon surface facets. Okay, there may be a polygon which may be having multiple surfaces, or there may be objects which may be made up of polygons on different surfaces. If you consider a cube, it is having how many surfaces? 6 surfaces, right? Left, right, bottom, top, near and far surfaces. So objects in a given scene are described as sets of polygon surface facets. The description for each object includes coordinate information specifying the geometry for the polygon facets and other surface parameters such as the color, the transparency, and the light reflection properties. So every surface of the object will be having a geometry associated with it, the basic shape, the number of vertices, the edges, and so on, as well as some other surface parameters such as the color of the surface, the transparency of the surface, and the light reflection properties of the surface. Now, the data of the polygons are placed into tables that are to be used in the subsequent processing, display, and manipulation of objects in a scene. So any object you take, so they will be ultimately broken down into a bunch of polygons. Okay. So the data of the polygons are placed into tables that are to be used for the subsequent processing, display, and manipulation of the objects in a given scene. Now these polygon data tables can be categorized into two groups. First group we call it as the geometric tables, and the second group we call it as the attribute tables. So let us first see what do you mean by attribute tables. Attribute tables specify the attribute properties or the attribute values of the objects of the surfaces. What may be the attribute values for the surfaces? It may be the reflectivity of the surface, it may be the transparency of the surface, or it even might be the color properties of the given surface, including the texture properties. That is all the information that is stored in the attribute tables, which may be the color information, the texture information of the surface. We may have the transparency information. All these things will be stored in a group of polygon table called as the attribute tables. Now in this particular chapter, we'll be focusing on the other group that is called as the geometric tables. Geometric tables are basically used to store the geometric details of the different surfaces that form a given object. Okay, let us look at one example. Let us consider this particular object here. It is made up of two surfaces. You can see here. So one object you have which is made up of n number of vertices, multiple edges, and two surfaces S1 and S2. Here we have three sets of tables which are a part of the polygon table. First one we have something called as a vertex table. Second we have the edge table, and then we have something called as a surface facet table. Let us see what are the contents of each of these tables. Let us first look into what we mean by the vertex table. In the vertex table, it contains the positions of all the vertices that form this particular object. Okay, so how many vertices we have? V1, V2, V3, V4, V5. We have 5 different vertices. For each of these vertices, what is the X, Y, and Z coordinate position? That is what you are going to store in this vertex table. We are going to store the positions of all the vertices that are used to form this particular shape. Okay, that is a vertex table, which is a part of the geometric table under the polygon tables. So under polygon tables, we have the geometric tables. Under geometric tables, we have the vertex table, edge table, and surface facet table. In the vertex table, we just store the information about the location of the different vertices that form a given object. Okay, in this particular object that is given here, we have 5 different vertices. So vertex table will store the coordinate positions of these 5 different vertices using the X, Y, and Z values. So that is what we have here. X component, the Y component, and the Z component. X coordinate, Y coordinate, and the Z coordinate representation. The second table that we have here is called as the edge table. Edge table contains the details of all the edges that are used to form a given object. So for forming every edge, we need to have a bunch of vertices. Okay, every edge should have minimum of 2 vertices. So which are the vertices that are used to form a given edge? That information is stored in this edge table, right? So we have edges E1, E2, E3, E4, E5, and E6. For each of these edges, what are the vertices that are participating to form these edges? That information is stored in this edge table. For example, edge V1 is formed by connecting vertices V1 and V2. That is what is mentioned here. Similarly, edge 2 is formed by connecting V2 and V3. Edge 2 is formed by connecting the vertices V2 and V3. Similarly, edge E3 is formed by connecting vertices V3 and V1. That is mentioned here. Edge V4 is formed by connecting vertices V3 and V4. Edge E5 is formed by connecting the vertices V4 and V5. And edge E6 is formed by connecting the vertices V5 and V1. So these are the information pertaining to the formation of different edges. What are the vertices that are participating to form the different edges? That is about the edge table. Let us move on to the next table. This is a part of the polygon table, geometric representation of the polygon tables. We have something called as a surface facet table. Surface facet table, as the name suggests, provides information as to which are the different surfaces that are involved in forming a given object. As we can see in this particular diagram, or in this particular example, there are two surfaces that are formed. So for forming a surface, we need to have a bunch of edges. So which are the edges that are used to form a given surface? That information is provided in this surface facet table. So surface S1 is formed by using the edges E1, E2 and E3. That is what is mentioned here. Surface S1 is formed by connecting the edges E1, E2 and E3. Similarly, surface S2 is formed by connecting the edges, or it's formed by using the edges E3, E4, E5 and E6. So these are the three tables that is used for the geometric representation of the polygon tables. We have the vertex table, the edge table and the surface facet table. We can also extend the edge vertex, table to include the surface information also. Here, as we can see, we have seen earlier, the edge table just contains the information pertaining to what are the vertices that are involved to form these edges, right? We can also include the surface information specifying to which surface does this edge belong to. That is what was mentioned here. So edge E1 is formed by connecting the vertices V1 and V2, and it is a part of the surface S1. So edge E1 is formed by connecting the vertices V1 and V2, and it is a part of the surface S1. What about the edge E3? So edge E3 is formed by connecting the vertices V1 and V2, and it's a part of both S1 and S2, as you can look at it from this particular diagram. Edge E3, if I consider, it is formed by connecting the vertices V1 and V2, and it is a part of both the surfaces, S1 as well as S2. That is what is mentioned here. Edge E3, it's formed by connecting V3 and V1, and it is a part of both the surfaces, S1 and S2 as well. So that is about the polygon tables. Now, because the geometric data tables may contain extensive listing of the vertices and the edges for complex objects and scenes, it is important that the data be checked for consistency and completeness. We need to ensure the consistency and completeness of the data that is represented in the geometric tables or the geometric data tables. Now, we can perform a bunch of tests. Some of the tests that can be performed by the graphics packages are: first test is that every vertex is listed as an endpoint for at least two edges. Okay, whatever vertices are mentioned in the vertex table, so every vertex is listed as an endpoint for at least two edges. So that is first test that we need to check, so that none of the unwanted vertices are considered in the vertex table. We need to ensure that every vertex is listed as an endpoint for at least two edges. Second test is that every edge is a part of at least one polygon. That is the second test that we need to check, that every edge is a part of at least one polygon. So every vertex should be a part of at least one edge. Second test is every edge should be a part of at least one polygon, that is the surface. Third test is that every polygon is closed. We don't want any unclosed polygon. The polygon should form a closed surface. Hence we call the term as it as a surface. We need to ensure that every polygon that we are going to form is a closed polygon. The fourth test is that each polygon has at least one shared edge. And this is what we have done here. Each polygon has at least one shared edge. Edge E3 is a shared edge between the two polygons, or the two surfaces. The last test is that if the edge table contains pointers to the polygons, every edge referenced by a polygon pointer has a reciprocal pointer back to the polygon. This is the last test we need to check. If the edge table contains pointers to the polygons, every edge referred by a polygon pointer has a reciprocal pointer back to the polygon. As you can consider here, edge E1 is having a pointer to the polygon S1 of the surface S1. Similarly, S1 surface is having a reciprocal pointer back to the edge E1. That is what they're ensuring. That is what the graphics packages checks before we actually form these geometric objects, which are split into multiple surfaces. Ultimately, these surfaces are represented as polygons, which in turn uses a bunch of edges, which in turn makes use of some vertices. Vertices are represented using their x, y, and z coordinate values. So that is about the polygon tables. Now let us proceed to understand something called as the front and back polygon faces. Right? Let us try to identify the polygon front and back faces. The side of a polygon that faces into the object interior is called as the back face, and the visible or outward side is called as the front face. The face of the polygon that is visible to us, that is called as the front face, and the side of the polygon behind that is called as the back face. The side of the polygon that faces into the object interior is called as the back face, and the visible or the outward side is called as the front face. Every polygon is contained within an infinite plane that partitions the space into two regions. So every polygon that you consider is contained within an infinite plane that partitions the space into two regions. Any point that is not on the plane and that is visible to the front face of a polygon surface is said to be in the front of a polygon and thus outside the object. So any point that is not on the polygon plane and that is visible to the front face of the polygon surface section is said to be in front or outside of the plane and outside the object. So if you want to consider any point, whether it is on the plane or outside the plane, so any point that is visible to the front face of the polygon surface section is said to be the outside point or in front of the given polygon. Any point that is visible to the back face of the polygon is said to be behind the plane or inside the polygon. Now, the plane equations can be used to identify the position of the spatial points relative to the polygon facets of an object. Okay, for any point x, y, z that is not on the plane, we can use the plane equation with the parameters a, b, and c to determine whether it is on the plane or not on the plane. You consider any point which is represented by the x, y, and z coordinates and use it in the plane equation along with the parameters a, b, and c, a, b, c, and d. And if ax plus by plus cz plus d not equals 0, that indicates the point x, y, z is not on the plane. If it is equal to 0, that indicates the point x, y, z is on the plane. So any point in 3D space is represented using its x, y, and z coordinate values. You consider these x, y, and z values and use it in the plane equation, taking into account the parameters a, b, c, and d, and use the equation ax plus by plus cz plus d. If it yields a value which is non-zero, that indicates the point is not on the plane. If you get a value equal to 0, that indicates the point is on the plane. Thus, we can identify the point as either behind or in front of a polygon surface contained within that plane according to the sign. So if this equation ax plus by plus cz plus d gives us a negative value for a given value of x, y, z, then the point x, y, z is behind the plane. Similarly, if this equation yields a value which is positive for a given point x, y, z, then the point can be considered to be in front of the plane. So if you are given a value of x, y, and z for a given point position, the x, y, and z coordinates, and also the values for the parameters a, b, c, and d, you can use this plane equation to check whether the point is in front of the polygon or behind the polygon, or in front of the plane or behind the plane. Now, the orientation of the polygon surface in space can be described with a normal vector or the plane containing that polygon. So if you want to determine the orientation of the given plane surface or the orientation of the polygon, you can do that by having a normal vector. So what is the normal vector? The vector which is at 90 degrees to the given surface. You can use this normal vector to the polygon to determine the orientation of the polygon surface. So the normal vector will be something like this, which is having three components a, b, c. You can use this normal vector to determine the orientation of a given polygon surface. Okay. Now the polygon vector points in a direction from inside the plane to the outside, that is from the back face of the polygon to the front face. As you can see here, the normal vector points from the inside of the polygon towards the outside. Thus, the normal vector for this plane is 1, 0, 0, which is in the direction of the positive x-axis. If you have a normal vector which is given something like this, 1, 0, 0, that indicates the normal is in the direction of x-axis, positive x-axis. So if it is -1, that indicates it is in the negative x-axis, and so on. Thus, the elements of a normal vector can also be obtained using the vector cross product calculation. Okay, so let us say we have a convex polygon surface and a right-handed Cartesian system. We again select any three vertex positions v1, v2, and v3 taken in counterclockwise direction. Suppose we have a given polygon and a right-handed Cartesian system. What we do is we select any three vertex position. Let us consider these vertex positions as vertex v1, v2, and v3 in counterclockwise direction when waving from outside the object. When waving from outside the object towards the inside. Let us say we are waving from here. So this can be in the counterclockwise direction. This can be v1, v2, and v3 because we are moving from counterclockwise direction. So we can consider any three vertices. It can be v1, v2, and v3. We need to consider any three vertex positions in the counterclockwise direction when we are waving the polygon from the outside towards the inside. Now forming two vectors, one from v1 to v2 and the second one from v1 to v3, we can calculate the normal vector n as a vector cross product given as n equals to v2 minus v1 cross v3 minus v1. So using these three coordinate positions, vertex positions, we need to find two vectors, one vector from vertex v1 to v2 and one more second vertex from v1 to v3, and then we can calculate the value for the normal vector as the vector cross product given as n equals to vector v2 minus v1 or v2 minus v1 cross v3 minus v1. This generates the values for the plane parameters a, b, and c. Okay, using the values for these parameters a, b, and c, we can obtain the value for the parameter d by substituting these values and the coordinates in the equation ax plus by plus cz equals to 0. So whatever value that we have considered here, these three values represent the a, b, and c values which will be used in this particular equation. We can get those values by finding the vector cross product as given here. So once you got the values for the parameters a, b, and c, you can generate the value for the parameter d by substituting these in the equation ax plus by plus cz plus d equals to 0. Now there is one more way in which we can specify the plane equation. The plane equation can be expressed in the vector form using the normal n and the position p of any point in the plane as given n dot p equals to minus d. You can use the dot product of two vectors, the normal vector n and the position of any point p. So n dot p should be equals to minus d. So this is one more way of expressing the plane equation using the normal n and any position p on the plane. So n dot p should be equals to minus OpenGL polygon fill area functions. Let us see how can we use the OpenGL polygon fill area functions to draw or to fill the given polygons with a given color. So in some implementations of OpenGL, the following routine can be more efficient than generating a fill rectangle using the GL vertex specifications. So in the previous examples, you might have seen how can you create a rectangle, an unfilled rectangle using GL line loop. You need to specify 4 vertex position. It is going to fill a rectangle which is not filled, or it is going to draw a rectangle which is not filled. If you want to draw a filled rectangle, in that case, we can use a function called as GL rect. So in place of star, you can have any data types. It can be I for integers, F for floating point numbers, and so on, and 4 coordinate position. Okay, and 2 coordinate position basically, the top right corner and the bottom left corner. Okay. So one corner of the rectangle is at position x1, y1, and the opposite corner of the rectangle is at position x2, y2. We need to specify 2 coordinate values, one for the top left corner and one for the bottom right corner. You just specify these 2 points to generate a rectangle. We did not specify 4 points. As we all are aware, to draw a rectangle, we need minimum of 4 points, right? We did not specify the 4 coordinate positions. Just by using the 2 opposite corner vertices or the 2 opposite corner vertex positions, we can just specify the OpenGL function glrect to draw a rectangle just by using 2 corner positions x1, y1 and x2, y2. One corner of this rectangle is at the coordinate position x1, y1, and the opposite corner of the rectangle is at position x2, y2. Now the suffix codes for GL rectangle specifies the coordinate data type and whether the coordinates are to be expressed as array elements. For example, we can use I as a suffix for this GL rectangle function for integer, S for short, F for float, D for double, and V for vector. You can also represent these in terms of vectors as well. For example, for integers, we can rewrite this GL rectangle function as GL rectangle I, and these two opposite corner positions, 200, 100, that is the upper right corner, and 50, 250, the bottom left corner. If you put the coordinate values for this rectangle into arrays, we can generate the same square. So instead of specifying it something like this, we can rewrite it by specifying these two vertex positions in an array, something like this. So vertex array 1, 200, 100, the vertex array 2, 50, 250, and then we can use the suffix v to represent the vector. So GL rectangle integer vector, open bracket, the first name of the first vector, comma, name of the second vector. Vector is one more name for the array here, right? So GL rectangle IV, vertex 1, vertex 2. So this line is equivalent to this line. So you can use any line or any way of creating a GL rectangle or creating a rectangle by using this GL rectangle function. Okay. Now let us look at some other OpenGL polygon fill area functions. So the OpenGL primitive constant GL polygon, there should be underscore here. Okay, GL underscore polygon. We can display a single polygon fill area. So we want to draw a polygon taking into account all the polygons, taking into account all the vertices. We can use the OpenGL primitive constant called as GL polygon. I think you already discussed a whole bunch of or a lot of OpenGL primitive constants, the GL points, GL lines, GL line loop, GL line strip, and so on. So let us continue some of the other primitive constants for drawing the polygon fill area functions. Of representing the OpenGL polygon fill area functions, we have a primitive constant called as GL polygon, which can be used to draw a polygon something like this. Suppose we have input the positions of these 6 vertices here. It is going to draw an octagon, a filled octagon, filled hexagon, something like this. Okay, it's going to draw a filled hexagon, something like this. So only thing that we'll have to remember is the name of the primitive constant, which is GL underscore polygon. It should be specified within the GL begin and GL end pair, and within the GL begin and GL end pair, we need to specify the vertex positions using the function GL vertex. Using the function GL vertex, 2 for 2 dimensions, I for integer, and V for representing that we are referring it to an vector or an array. Okay. Fine. Let us continue. Then we have the second primitive for drawing the triangles. We have 3 primitives for drawing the triangles, different types of triangles. We have the first primitive called as the GL triangles. Now the GL triangle is used to draw a bunch of triangles, taking into account only 3 set of vertices at a time. As we are all aware, to draw a triangle, we need a minimum of 3 vertices, right? So it takes into account a set of 3 vertices and draws a disconnected triangle. The triangles that will be drawn will be something like this. They will be totally disconnected. There will not be any edge that is shared between, or the vertex that is shared between the different triangles that are formed. That is called as GL triangles primitive, where we consider 3 sets of vertices at a time and draw disconnected triangles. There is no reuse of the vertices here using GL triangles. The second type of triangles that we can draw is called as a triangle fan. So this is similar to GL triangles, but the difference is here there is a reuse of the vertices. It takes into account 3 sets of vertices at a time, and one of the vertices will be reused, or one edge will be reused for drawing the next triangle, and so on. There will be reuse of vertices and the edges here. So even if ultimately there are 2 vertices that are left out, that too will also be considered for drawing a new triangle. Okay. So first, let us say it is considering the triangle vertices P1, P2, and P6. Second triangle will be drawn taking into account this edge connecting P2, P6, and this P5 or P6, and so on, P3, and so on. So it basically forms triangles, making reuse of the triangle edges there. There is a reuse of triangle edges and the vertices. That is the GL triangle strip. Apart from this, you also have GL triangle fan. You might have seen the Japanese fans which open and close, which is made out of paper or bamboo, right? Something similar to that. In GL triangle fan, multiple triangles are formed, but one of the vertices will be fixed for all the triangles that will be formed. For example, in this particular example here, vertex P1 will be a common vertex for all the subsequent triangles that you're going to draw. That is called as a GL triangle fan. Okay, these are the 3 different OpenGL primitives for drawing the triangles. You have the GL triangles for drawing disconnected triangles, You have the GL triangle strip for drawing connected triangles by sharing edge and the vertices. Then you have GL triangle fan, where we draw the triangles by having one common vertex. Okay, that is the example for GL triangle fan. Rest of the thing that's common for all the OpenGL primitives. You specify a bunch of vertices, and based on what order you have specified, that order will be considered for drawing the triangles. That is about the triangles. Let us proceed about quadrilaterals. We all know what is a quadrilateral. The shape that is formed by taking into account four set of vertices. Just by changing the name of the parameter or name of the OpenGL constant to OpenGL GL underscore quad, you can generate quadrilaterals which are disconnected. Basically a shape that is formed by connecting four vertices using the edges. You can form different quadrilaterals by specifying OpenGL constant called as GL underscore quads, GL hyphen QUADS or GL underscore QUADS. If you want to generate a bunch of quadrilaterals which are connected by sharing a bunch of edges, for that we have OpenGL primitive called as GL quad strip. Okay, GL quad strip will construct a bunch of quadrilaterals taking four vertices at a time, and there will be common edge that will be shared between these quadrilaterals. That is what we call as the GL quad strip. Okay, let us briefly look at some of these particular primitives. Okay, let us look at an example for drawing these primitives. So we have the same main function which is common for almost all the programs that we have discussed. So we have the init function where we specify the background color, the color for drawing, and the orthogonal two-dimensional orthogonal weaving volume. And here we have the actual function which draws something. We clear the buffers, and then we specify GL begin and GL polygon, the OpenGL primitive constant name, and a bunch of vertices, GL end and GL flush. So initially I've used GL polygon here. So let us see what the output will be. I specified 6 different vertices. I run this code. And this is what you get, a hexagon which is drawn in black color because we have specified the color to be drawn as black. Okay, let us look at the same example by changing the primitive OpenGL primitive constant name to GL triangle fan. Let us see what change do we get. Okay, so instead of GL polygon, let me just change this primitive name to GL triangle fan. So I build it once again. Let us observe the output. Let us see if the change is visible or not. The change is not visible. Let us try to modify the code. As you can see, this output is similar to the previous one, and there does not appear to be any change. Just for the purpose of identifying the change, let us change the colors here. Okay, I've commented the colors. Let us uncomment these lines. Okay. So I've given different colors for the different vertices. Let us see if the triangle fan will be visible now. That is the only intention here. Yes, this is the last vertex. Yes, let us just build the code and check whether the triangle fan can be made out by looking at the output. Yes, you can see it's a very colorful triangle fan. You can observe this vertex will be common for all the triangles that will be formed because there is a tint of red for all the triangles that are formed. Okay, so this is an example. This will be the first triangle, the second triangle, third triangle, fourth triangle, and so on. So this is an example for OpenGL geometric primitive constant called as GL underscore triangle underscore fans, right? So with this, let us conclude today's session.